night. It opens with slaves mixing mud and straw, hurling bricks under the crack of the overseer's whips to build monuments to the pharaoh. This movie does not hold back at all. Now, this leads to the visually suggested but story confirmed infanticide of the Hebrews. Moses' mother crafts a basket and sends it on a perilous journey down the river. Historically, Egyptians did indeed build many tombs and statues, so they were of course very common. For Moses, biblically there was no danger from rushing waters or animals as the basket was placed among the reeds in calm, shallow water as his sister was watching nearby. Still, not sure how he could breathe in that thing. The slave aspect to all this is something that I will get into later. Eventually, Moses found his way to what seems to be a fine black woman, though her physical appearance is never really described in the Bible. We also meet his brother, called Ramses II, in the movie, but the book of Exodus doesn't really name the pharaoh at all. Next, we have Moses and Ramses going full fast and furious on supernatural horses. The supernatural part isn't any source, but seeing how absurdly fast, strong, and durable these things are, I think it's a fair judgment. Also, Pharaoh keeps the same hairstyle he's had since childhood, which to be fair, is a style we know was commonly used by pharaohs at the time. Moses and Ramses later meet to see their new exotic slave girl gift, highlighting that at this point, Moses has no issue with slavery.
Let us inspect this desert flower. More like a desert cobra.
Not much of a snake charmer, are you?
That's why I give her to you.
No.
It just hit me that calling a person good at talking to women a snake charmer is genius, and we should all be saying that from now on. This woman is Zipporah. In the Bible, Moses meets her in Medellin, where she's the daughter of a local priest named Jethro. Here, she's introduced as a palace captive. The priestly comedy duo Hotep, a fitting name, though funny now given the modern connotations with that name, and Huey are honestly very amusing comedy duo. Ramses and Moses are also great brothers, which makes what's going to happen next all the more tragic. Zipporah escapes at night, where Moses follows and meets his family. It's highlighted again that Moses says flat out he does not care about freedom until meeting his brother and sister. His brother, voiced by Jeff Goldblum, who, while he may not be doing his full Jeff Goldblum isms, is still a voice that you just spot instantly. Moses starts to remember his childhood, or rather babyhood, by his sister singing a song his mother sung when she was sending him adrift. They even tried to make his sister look like his mother. I was like, wait, what does this remind me of? And I went, oh right, this is Broly. Just replace a song with crying. Moses runs away, and we get one of the most creative dream sequences I've ever seen as he turns 2D and the horrible history of his father is told via hieroglyphs. He soaks and is comforted by his father, who has no regrets for his actions. Biblically, this is all movie, as like I said before, Moses already knew his heritage from the beginning. Later, Moses and Ramses are talking in a worksite, and we see his brother and sister both dressed much better than everyone else for some reason. Moses then notices an old man getting the absolute kuta kente beaten out of him. The beating is so bad, the man's name isn't Abraham anymore. It's like Tyler or Zachary. Anyway, I know this is DreamWorks, but the prince does the most old school Disney run I've ever seen. Jumps on the overseer, and then the jump turns into a push that leads to the man's fall and death. It is seen as mostly accidental in the movie. However, in the Bible, Moses sees the abuse, looks around, and intentionally kills that man without any remorse. He even hides the body, then flees Egypt. By the way, I don't know if this is intentional, but you see a lot of mostly older slaves now, This is probably showing the effect of the infanticide. Eventually, he gets caught in a sandstorm and is almost completely covered up. This is a movie-only transition thing. He also loses his hood, which I often forget is not his hair. I also, many times throughout this, kept saying the Prince of Tennis instead of the Prince of Egypt. He stumbles upon the slave girl, has dinner with her family, and you see a huge fire, which is a bit of a clue for what happens next. Some time passes, Moses starts to look real Moses-y, and he stumbles upon a burning bush. The scene largely sticks to the source, a reluctant Moses, a patient God, and the promise of a land flowing of milk and honey. In the Bible, however, it takes more convincing. Moses says he is slow of speech and not fit to address the people. God appoints his brother, Aaron, a spokesman and prophet. Aaron delivers God's messages to both the Israelites and Pharaoh, performs signs and miracles. In fact, several feats attributed to Moses in popular memory were done by Aaron. He also builds a golden calf later, but that's not in this movie. Moses returns to Egypt, where Ramses is delighted to see him and quickly pardons him. In the Bible, however, Pharaoh was not happy to see Moses and was pretty much hostile from the very beginning. Cut to the scene where Moses transforms his staff into a serpent, and he faces off against Hotep and Huey in a big theatrical showdown. It's almost like America's Got Talent kind of thing. So yeah, the musicians summon their own snake, invoking the names of powerful Egyptian gods Ra, Mut, Nut, and other Egyptian gods whose name I would mess up if I tried. You can imagine Ramses have seen these two perform these things quite often with how just well choreographed it all is. It's probably his favorite thing, just look at his face. However, Moses' snake swallows the other snakes, symbolizing the Hebrews' God as being more powerful than the Egyptians. Shortly after, Moses randomly sees Ramses on a boat. Moses performs the first miracle by turning the waters of the Nile into blood. The Egyptian priests replicate the miracle, which leaves the Pharaoh unconvinced. But Moses says the Nile is a river in Egypt. It's plague time. Okay, he doesn't say that, but we are finally getting to the plagues. By the way, if you're wondering why through everything Ramses does not change his mind, biblically it says his heart was hardened by God, or some sources say by Ra, but it is meant as Ramses cannot release the slaves out of fear or logic. He can only do it through his heart. Also in the Bible, their meeting was not random. God tells Moses Pharaoh will be on the banks of the Nile in the morning. Moses is instructed to take the staff and, with Aaron present, strike the waters while Pharaoh is watching. Aaron himself actually performs the act, and his staff and all the water in the Nile turns red. The plagues come quickly: frogs from the Nile, gnats from the ground, fleas killing livestock and harming people, hail and fire from the sky, and implied 3 days of darkness. It all culminates in the death of the firstborn. The film doesn't linger long on the suffering, but the depiction of an angel of death in the Bible is described as a devastating night, with loud wailing heard throughout Egypt, as every house someone had died. Historically, of course, nothing like this is recorded. Over the corpse of his son, Ramses tells Moses, "Your people can go." They leave through the valley, with younger faces and brighter colors appearing in the crowd. Just when it seems in the clear, Ramses decides he wants a rematch with God and charges down the valley. God responds with a towering fire tornado, though in the Bible it is simply called a pillar of fire and cloud, though this interpretation is pretty cool. And we finally get the scene of Moses parting the Red Sea. It's a scene where you know a lot of the budget and animated time went in. Like, this was definitely talked about in pre-production before the rest of the movie, and it looks great. Though I'm not sure if it was intentional, The parting looks a little bit, you know. Anyway, the Israelites having a hard time adjusting to the wind and Moses just saying, "Man, leave it," was a nice touch. And then it cuts to an image I have burned into my memory of a kid being scared by the outline of a whale. Happy wasn't a false memory because it looked awesome. Also, for the first time, this wasn't Aaron's doing. This was God specifically telling Moses to use the staff to part the Red Sea. After the tornado fades away, the army charges into the split sea. They quickly learn why they abandon their carts, as their chariots get destroyed almost instantly. By the way, it makes some sense for why Ramses is continuing, but why are the other guys still following him? I mean, I get he's the pharaoh, but at some point, it's just a crazy person leading them to their almost certain death against divine power. I hope that $2 bonus and dental plan is worth it in the end. The Hebrews make it out. The sea closes, and Ramses is washed away, but is shown to be alive. In the Bible, Pharaoh's fate is left ambiguous. The last spoken line in the movie is, "They are free." And that is the end of what is likely DreamWorks' best film. As for the adaptation, it is visually stunning, has a very every scene a painting style of feeling. And while I would not save any of these songs to a playlist, they were still very good and very fitting to the story. Biblically, the film rearranges and changes details from Exodus to tell a tighter, more personal story. The brother relationship here is stronger. And characters like Aaron, while he was very important, I do understand removing him to tell a more simplified story. Get rid of the middleman. Also, historically, I feel I should say there is no historical proof that I'm aware of the Hebrews being slaves in this time period. Bible calls them forced laborers, and it should be noted that they were integrated into society and there were likely no large-scale cattle slavery at this time. And while they sadly never reached the promised land, in fact their future is so complex you can make multi-genre sequels to this. Still, what we do have is a very respectable and amazingly done film based on a biblical epic. Now, tell me your thoughts. What mythological movie would you like me to cover next? And remember, if I did anything wrong here, it's probably because I misremembered my friend, and please remember to buy his book. Anyway, later everyone.